The champagne bottle sat on my kitchen counter like a beautiful lie, its gold foil catching the overhead light in a way that should have made me happy. Instead, it made my stomach turn. Next to it lay a manila envelope, thick with papers that had my name typed across the front in that sterile font lawyers love so much. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Happy birthday, Gavin, my wife Lila said, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she thought she was being clever. She stood by the window, silhouetted against the late afternoon sun, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light. Even now, even with what I suspected was coming, I had to admit she was stunning. That's what had gotten me into this mess in the first place. I'm Gavin Mitchell, 38 years old as of today, and I design bridges for a living. I like things that make sense, structures that hold up under pressure, calculations that add up correctly. My marriage, apparently, was none of those things. "What's in the envelope, Lila?" I asked, though I already knew. The way she was standing, the champagne that was clearly meant to soften the blow, the fact that she'd actually remembered my birthday for the first time in 3 years, it all pointed to one thing. She smiled, and it was the kind of smile a shark might give a seal. "Why don't you open it and see?" I picked up the envelope, noting how my hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. Maybe I'd been expecting this longer than I realized. The papers inside were exactly what I thought they'd be. Divorce papers, professionally prepared, every detail spelled out in legal language that would make a normal person's eyes glaze over. But I'm not normal people. I read contracts for a living. I understand the fine print better than most lawyers. "You want me to sign these?" I said. It wasn't a question. "I think it's best for both of us," she replied, moving closer. She was wearing that perfume I'd bought her last Christmas, the expensive one that cost more than most people's car payments. "We've been growing apart, Gavin. You know it, I know it. Let's just be adults about this." Adults? Right. Like adults sneak around behind their husband's back with their coworker from the financial planning firm where they work. Like adults hide credit card statements and come home late 3 nights a week claiming they're working on special projects. I flipped through the pages, scanning the terms. Standard stuff, mostly. Division of assets, spousal support, which interestingly she was waiving, and then I found it. Buried on page 12, in subsection C of the property division clause, was something that made me smile for the first time in months. "You had Bradley Hoffman draw these up," I said, recognizing the law firm's particular style of overcomplicated language. "He's the best divorce attorney in the city," Lila said, popping the champagne cork. The sound was like a gunshot in our quiet kitchen. I wanted to make sure everything was handled properly. Bradley Hoffman was indeed one of the best divorce attorneys in the city. He was also the same lawyer who'd drawn up our prenuptial agreement 5 years ago, back when Lila's father had insisted we sign one before the wedding. The same prenuptial agreement that Lila had apparently forgotten contained a very specific clause about hidden assets and infidelity. I kept reading, my smile growing wider. Oh, this was rich. This was absolutely perfect. "Something funny?" Lila asked, handing me a glass of champagne. Her tone was getting sharper now, probably because I wasn't reacting the way she'd expected. She'd probably thought I'd cry or beg or make some pathetic scene that would justify whatever story she'd already told her friends about our marriage. "Just appreciating the thoroughness," I said, taking the glass. Bradley really covered all the bases here. What Lila didn't know, what she'd clearly forgotten in her rush to get rid of me, was that I'd been the one to insist on that particular clause in our prenup. See, even back then, I'd had my suspicions about Lila's relationship with money and loyalty. The clause stated that if either party filed for divorce due to infidelity or while concealing assets from the other spouse, certain penalties would apply. Specifically, any assets hidden by the filing party would automatically transfer to the other spouse upon discovery. And I'd been discovering quite a lot lately. "You know what, Lila?" I said, picking up the pen she'd helpfully left next to the papers. "You're absolutely right. We should be adults about this." I signed my name with a flourish, dated it, and slid the papers back across the counter to her. Her smile was triumphant, like she'd just won some great victory. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this," she said, already reaching for her phone, probably to text her boyfriend Eliot that the deed was done. "I'll file these first thing Monday morning." "You do that," I said, raising my champagne glass in a mock toast. "Here's to new beginnings." We clinked glasses, and I watched her drink, knowing she'd just sealed her own financial fate. The hidden condo downtown that she thought I didn't know about, registered under her maiden name, the secret investment account she'd been funneling money into for the past 2 years, the jewelry she'd been buying and keeping in a safety deposit box I wasn't supposed to know existed. All of it was about to become mine, thanks to the clause she'd forgotten and the evidence I'd been quietly gathering for months. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Mark, who tended bar at O'Malley's downtown. Heard some interesting gossip tonight. Drinks later? I glanced at Lila, who was now on her phone, typing furiously with that secretive smile she got when she was texting Eliot. Her fingers flew over the screen, probably sharing the good news about how she'd finally gotten rid of her boring husband. I think I'll head out for a while, I said, pocketing my phone. Celebrate my newfound freedom. That's a great idea, she said without looking up. I might have some friends over later. You know, girl talk. Girl talk. Right. More like a victory celebration where they'd all sit around talking about how clever Lila was, how she'd managed to dump me and keep all her assets, how she was finally free to be with Eliot openly. They had no idea what was coming. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, pausing to look back at my soon-to-be ex-wife. She was still typing on her phone, probably already making plans for her new life. The champagne sat half empty on the counter, and the divorce papers were stacked neatly beside it, my signature still wet on the last page. "Happy birthday to me," I muttered under my breath, and walked out into the evening air. The drive to O'Malley's gave me time to think, to really process what had just happened. 5 years of marriage ended with a bottle of champagne and a stack of legal papers. I should have been devastated. I should have been angry or hurt or something other than the cold satisfaction that was settling in my chest like ice. But all I could think about was the look on Lila's face when she realized what she'd done, when she discovered that her clever plan to divorce me while keeping her hidden assets had just backfired spectacularly. When she found out that I'd known about Eliot for months, had been documenting everything, building a case that would hold up in any court in the country, she thought she was so smart, so careful, but she'd forgotten the most important rule of any good con: always read the fine print. And I was very, very good at reading the fine print. O'Malley's was busy for a Tuesday night, filled with the usual mix of office workers drowning their sorrows and college kids pretending they were old enough to handle their liquor. I found Mark behind the bar, his sleeves rolled up and his graying hair pulled back in a ponytail that made him look like an aging rock star, which actually he had been back in the 90s. "There's the birthday boy," he said, sliding a beer across the bar before I'd even sat down. "You look like a man who's had an interesting evening." "You could say that." I took a long drink, savoring the bitter taste. "What's this gossip you mentioned?" Mark glanced around, making sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "Your wife's boyfriend was in here Sunday night. Eliot something, works at Morrison Financial?" "Eliot Brennan," I supplied. "And yeah, I know about him." Well, he was pretty drunk, shooting his mouth off to anyone who'd listen about how he was finally going to get what he deserved. Kept talking about some woman who was going to leave her husband for him, how they had it all planned out. I nodded, not surprised. Eliot had always been the type to brag, especially when he was drinking. It's probably how half the office knew about the affair before I did. "Here's the interesting part," Mark continued. "He was with 2 women, blonde, looked like they belonged in some fancy country club. They were eating up every word, asking all kinds of questions about this mystery woman's husband. That would be Tessa and Monica, Lila's closest friends and biggest enablers. They'd been encouraging this affair from the beginning, probably seeing it as some kind of romantic drama they could live vicariously through." "Did he mention any specifics?" I asked. "Oh, he mentioned plenty. Talked about how the husband was some boring engineer who didn't appreciate what he had, how the woman was finally going to dump him and take him for everything he was worth." Mark's expression darkened. "Guy was a real piece of work, Gavin. The way he talked about you, about your marriage, it wasn't right." I finished my beer, feeling that cold satisfaction growing stronger. "Well, he's about to learn that boring engineers can be full of surprises." "What do you mean?" I told Mark about the divorce papers, about the clause Lila had forgotten, about all the evidence I'd been gathering. His expression went from concerned to amazed to something that might have been admiration. "Jesus, Gavin, you've been planning this for months?" "Planning is a strong word. I've been preparing for possibilities." I signaled for another beer. I always suspected Lila was hiding money from me. The affair just gave me the motivation to do something about it. And now? Now I wait for her to file the papers, and then I spring my trap. My phone buzzed with a text message. Then another, and another. The first was from Lila. "Thanks for being so mature about this. I know this is hard, but it's for the best." The second was from a number I didn't recognize. "Heard the good news. So happy for you both. Tessa." The third was from Eliot himself. "No hard feelings, man. These things happen." I showed the messages to Mark, who whistled low. They're not wasting any time, are they? Why would they? As far as they know, they won? I pocketed my phone. Let them celebrate. It'll make what comes next even sweeter. We drank in comfortable silence for a while, watching the crowd ebb and flow around us. I was just starting to relax when I saw a familiar face across the bar. Monica, one of Lila's friends, was sitting in a corner booth with two other women I didn't recognize. She kept glancing over at me, whispering to her companions. Looks like word is spreading, Mark observed, following my gaze. Good. Let them talk. But Monica wasn't content to just whisper. After a few more drinks, she made her way over to the bar, her designer heels clicking on the worn wooden floor. She was trying to look sympathetic, but I could see the excitement in her eyes. This was probably the most interesting thing that had happened to her all year. Gavin, she said, touching my arm with fake concern. I just heard. I'm so sorry. Sorry about what? I asked, playing dumb. About you and Lila, the divorce. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. I want you to know, I think she's making a huge mistake. This was rich. Monica had been encouraging Lila's affair from the beginning, had probably helped her cover her tracks more than once. Now she was playing the concerned friend, probably fishing for information she could take back to Lila. These things happen, I said, echoing Eliot's text. Sometimes people just grow apart. Still, it must be so hard for you, especially finding out about... She trailed off, waiting for me to fill in the blanks. About what? Well, you know, about Eliot. I let my face fall, just a little. Let her think she was getting the reaction she wanted. Yeah, that was difficult. I'm sure it was. But you have to understand, Gavin, Lila wasn't happy. She hasn't been happy for a long time. What she found with Eliot, it's real. It's love. Love. Right. What Lila had found with Eliot was a man who made twice my salary and drove a BMW. But I wasn't going to argue with Monica about it. I hope they'll be very happy together, I said. Monica's smile was patronizing. That's very mature of you. I know this must be devastating, but you'll find someone else. Someone more suited to you. Someone more suited to me. Translation. Someone less attractive, less sophisticated, less expensive to maintain than Lila. Monica was enjoying this, I realized. She was getting off on my supposed humiliation. I'm sure I will, I said. In fact, I'm already looking forward to starting fresh. New apartment, new life, new opportunities. That's the spirit, Monica said, patting my arm again. And don't worry about the financial side of things. I know Lila feels terrible about that, but she's been very generous in the settlement. She could have taken you for much more. Generous. That was one way to put it. What Monica didn't know was that Lila had been generous, because she thought she was keeping her hidden assets secret. She'd waived spousal support and agreed to a minimal division of our known assets because she believed she was walking away with a secret fortune. She's always been thoughtful that way, I said. Monica beamed, probably thinking she'd successfully rubbed salt in my wounds. Well, I should get back to my friends. Take care of yourself, Gavin, and remember, everything happens for a reason. She click-clacked back to her booth, and I watched her lean in to whisper excitedly to her companions. They all looked over at me with expressions of pity mixed with curiosity. I raised my beer in a mock salute, and they quickly looked away. That was painful to watch, Mark said. That was perfect, I corrected. By tomorrow morning, half the city will know that I'm a broken man who's grateful for Lila's generosity. It'll make the reversal that much more shocking. When are you going to make your move? Soon. I need to let her file the papers first, make it official. Then I'll have my lawyer contact hers with the discovery of her hidden assets. I finished my second beer. The prenup is very clear about what happens next. And what about lover boy? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Eliot's going to learn that actions have consequences. I'm thinking his BMW might develop some mechanical issues. Gavin. Nothing illegal, I assured him. Nothing that can't be explained by normal wear and tear, but maybe something that'll make his life a little less comfortable. Mark shook his head, but he was grinning. Remind me never to get on your bad side. I left O'Malley's around 10, driving home through the quiet streets of our upscale neighborhood. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, which meant Lila had either gone to bed early or gone out to celebrate with Eliot. Given what I knew about her, I was betting on the latter. Inside, I found evidence of her girl talk session. Empty wine glasses in the living room, crumbs from expensive cheese on the coffee table, and the lingering scent of 3 different perfumes. They'd had quite the party, probably toasting Lila's successful escape from her boring marriage. I cleaned up the mess, partly out of habit and partly because I wanted to maintain the illusion that I was the same predictable, accommodating husband I'd always been. Let them think I was broken, defeated, grateful for whatever scraps Lila was willing to throw me. The divorce papers were still on the kitchen counter where I'd left them, my signature dark against the white paper. Looking at them now, I felt a surge of anticipation. In a few days, maybe a week, Lila would file these papers and set in motion a chain of events that would destroy her carefully constructed new life. My phone rang. Lila's ringtone. "Hello? Gavin?" She sounded drunk, happy, careless. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I know today was hard." "I'm fine, Lila. Where are you?" "Out with friends, processing the end of our marriage." She giggled, and I heard a man's voice in the background. Eliot, no doubt. "I want you to know, this doesn't mean I don't care about you. You're a good man, Gavin. You deserve someone who can appreciate that." "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot. We can still be friends, right? After everything settles down?" Friends. She wanted to be friends. After 5 years of marriage, after months of lying and cheating, after serving me divorce papers on my birthday, she wanted to be friends. "Of course," I said. "I'd like that." "Good. That's good. I was worried you might be angry." "Why would I be angry? You're right. We weren't happy. This is better for both of us." "Exactly." Her voice was bright with relief and alcohol. "I'm so glad you understand. Some men would have made this difficult, but you are being so mature about everything." Mature. There was that word again. Everyone seemed very impressed with how mature I was being. "I should let you get back to your friends," I said. "Okay, I'll probably stay out late tonight, so don't wait up. And Gavin, happy birthday. I know the timing wasn't great, but I hope you can still find a way to celebrate." "I already am," I said, and hung up. I stood in my kitchen, looking around at the home I'd thought I was building with the woman I'd married. The granite countertops I'd paid for, the stainless steel appliances she'd insisted on, the wine rack filled with bottles we'd never opened together. Soon, it would all be mine. The house, the accounts, the investments, everything we'd built together, plus everything she'd tried to hide from me. But more than that, I was going to get something I hadn't expected when this all started. The satisfaction of watching Lila and Eliot realize that their perfect plan had backfired spectacularly. I poured myself a glass of wine from one of those unopened bottles, raised it in a toast to the empty kitchen. Happy birthday to me, indeed. 3 days later, I was sitting in my office reviewing structural calculations for a new bridge project when my lawyer called. David Chen, no relation to anyone I knew, just one of the best contract attorneys in the city, had been handling my legal affairs since I'd started my engineering firm. "It's done," he said without preamble. "Your wife filed the divorce papers this morning. The clerk's office processed them an hour ago." "Perfect timing," I said, closing the folder on my desk. "How long before we can move?" "I can file the asset discovery motion this afternoon. Given the evidence you've provided, I expect the court will freeze her accounts within 48 hours. I'd spent the last 3 days gathering the final pieces of documentation I needed. Bank statements, property records, photographs of the jewelry she thought I didn't know about. It was amazing what a private investigator could uncover when you gave them the right leads. "What about the condo?" "That's the beauty of this situation," David said, and I could hear the admiration in his voice. "Since the property was purchased with funds from your joint accounts, but registered only in her name, and since she failed to disclose it in the divorce filing, it automatically transfers to you under the prenup clause. No court hearing required." "And she'll be notified when?" "This afternoon, along with notice that all her other hidden assets are frozen pending investigation." I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Lila was probably having lunch with Eliot, planning their future together. They had no idea their world was about to come crashing down. "There's one more thing," David continued. "Your wife's attorney called my office this morning. Apparently, Mrs. Mitchell is very eager to finalize everything quickly. She's offered to waive the waiting period if you'll agree to an expedited settlement. She's in a hurry." "Very much so. I suspect she and Mr. Brennan have plans they'd like to implement sooner rather than later." "Plans. Like moving in together in the luxury condo she thought she owned. Like taking that European vacation she'd been secretly planning. Like starting their new life with money she thought I couldn't touch." "Tell her attorney we're happy to expedite things," I said. "In fact, we should have everything resolved by the end of the week." After I hung up with David, I called Mark at the bar. "It's happening," I told him. "The papers are filed, the trap is set. By tonight, Lila's going to discover that her secret condo now belongs to me." "Jesus, Gavin. Are you sure you want to go through with this?" I mean, she's still your wife. She was my wife, I corrected. She stopped being my wife the day she decided to cheat on me and steal from me. Now she's just someone who made a very expensive mistake. I spent the rest of the afternoon pretending to work while checking my phone every few minutes. At 3:47 p.m., I got the text I'd been waiting for. "What the hell did you do?" It was from Lila, all caps, no punctuation. She'd gotten the notice. My phone immediately started ringing, Lila's number. "Hello, Lila." "You bastard!" Her voice was shrill, hysterical. "You can't do this. That condo is mine." "Actually, according to the prenuptial agreement you signed, it's mine now, along with the investment account, the jewelry, and anything else you tried to hide from me." "I didn't hide anything. I just wanted some financial independence." "By secretly moving our money into accounts I couldn't access? By buying property with joint funds and putting it in your name only? That's called theft, Lila. The prenup calls it concealment of marital assets, and the penalty is pretty severe." "You knew about this the whole time." The accusation came out as a sob. "When you signed those papers, you knew what would happen." "I knew exactly what would happen. You filed for divorce while concealing assets from me, just like the prenup said you couldn't do. The consequences are pretty clearly spelled out." "This isn't fair." "Fair. That was rich, coming from someone who'd been cheating on me for months while secretly draining our accounts." "You're right," I said. "It's not fair. But it is legal, and it is what you agreed to when you signed that prenup 5 years ago." "I'll fight this. I'll take you to court." "With what money? Your accounts are frozen, remember? And good luck finding a lawyer who'll take your case on contingency when the evidence against you is this overwhelming." There was silence on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear her mind racing, trying to find a way out of the trap she'd walked into. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "I don't want anything, Lila. I already have everything, thanks to you." I hung up and immediately called Mark. "It's done," I said. "She knows." "How'd she take it?" "About as well as you'd expect. I think the reality of the situation is starting to sink in." "What happens now?" "Now comes the fun part. Eliot doesn't know yet. He's about to discover that his new girlfriend is suddenly very expensive to maintain." I didn't have to wait long. At 6:15 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was Eliot. "You son of a bitch," he said without preamble. "What kind of man destroys his own wife out of spite?" "The kind of man whose wife tried to steal from him," I replied calmly. "But don't worry, Eliot. I'm sure you'll be happy to support Lila in the style she's become accustomed to. After all, isn't that what love is about? You can't do this to her. She doesn't deserve this. She deserves exactly what she got. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with the consequences." "This isn't over," Eliot said. "I won't let you destroy her life." "Her life isn't destroyed, Eliot. It's just different now. She's free to be with you, which is what she wanted. She's just not going to be rich while she does it." I could hear Lila crying in the background, and Eliot's voice got harder. "You're going to pay for this, Mitchell, one way or another." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." He hung up, and I smiled. Empty threats from a man who was just beginning to understand how much his affair was going to cost him. Lila had gone from being a wealthy woman planning to leave her husband to being a broke woman dependent on her boyfriend's generosity. That was going to put a strain on their relationship that I didn't think it could survive. But I wasn't done yet. If Eliot wanted to make threats, I was going to make sure he understood exactly who he was dealing with. I drove to the parking garage where Eliot kept his precious BMW, the one he'd bought to impress Lila and probably half the other women at his office. It was sitting in its usual spot, gleaming black paint reflecting the fluorescent lights. I'd come prepared. The bag in my hand contained a pound of frozen shrimp I'd bought on the way over, along with a small screwdriver and a pair of rubber gloves. It took me less than 5 minutes to remove the cabin air filter and pack the space full of seafood before replacing the cover. In this heat, it would take about 2 days for the smell to become noticeable. By the end of the week, his car would be uninhabitable. The odor would be so embedded in the ventilation system that it would cost thousands to fix, assuming it could be fixed at all. I was back in my own car and halfway home when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Monica. I heard what you did to Lila. You should be ashamed of yourself." Then another from Tessa. "I can't believe you're being so vindictive. Lila thought you were a better man than this." And another from a number I didn't recognize. "Karma's a bitch, asshole. You'll get yours." Word was spreading fast through Lila's social circle. They were closing ranks, painting me as the villain in this story. The poor, innocent woman who'd only wanted to be happy, destroyed by her cruel, vindictive husband. Let them think that. It would make what came next even more satisfying. I was almost home when David called again. "We have a problem," he said. "Lila's attorney is claiming she was coerced into signing the prenup. They're filing a motion to have it declared invalid." "On what grounds?" "Duress, lack of independent counsel, failure to fully disclose assets at the time of signing. The usual arguments people make when they realize they've signed something that doesn't work in their favor." I pulled into my driveway, noting that Lila's car wasn't there. She was probably staying with Eliot, or maybe with one of her friends. Either way, I had the house to myself. Will it work? Not a chance. You both had independent attorneys. The agreement was signed weeks before the wedding, and all assets were fully disclosed. Plus, we have 5 years of her acting in accordance with the agreement's terms. No judge is going to invalidate it now. Good. How long will this delay things? A few weeks at most. It's a desperate move, Gavin. She's running out of options. After I hung up, I walked through my empty house, taking inventory of everything that was now mine. The furniture we'd bought together, the art she'd chosen, the kitchen appliances she'd insisted on upgrading. All of it was mine now, along with the house itself. But more than the material possessions, I had something else. The knowledge that Lila's perfect plan had backfired completely. She'd thought she was so clever, so careful in her preparations. She'd underestimated the man she'd married, and now she was paying the price. My phone rang one more time. Lila again. "Please," she said, and her voice was different now. Smaller, desperate. "Please, Gavin. Can we talk? Can we work something out?" "What did you have in mind?" I'll call off the divorce. We can try again. Go to counseling, work on our marriage." "With Eliot? That's over. I ended it. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I almost believed her. The desperation in her voice was real, and for just a moment, I felt something that might have been pity. Then I remembered coming home early from work 6 months ago and finding her on the phone with him, whispering and laughing in a way she hadn't with me in years. I remembered the credit card statements for restaurants I'd never been to, hotels I'd never stayed in. I remembered the way she'd looked at me when she handed me those divorce papers, like I was something she was scraping off her shoe. "It's too late for that, Lila. You made your choice. Please, I'll do anything. I'll sign whatever you want, agree to whatever terms you set. Just please don't take everything from me." "I'm not taking anything from you. I'm keeping what was mine all along. The money you hid came from our joint accounts. The condo was bought with funds we earned together. The investments were made with income from both our jobs. I'm not stealing from you, Lila. I'm preventing you from stealing from me." What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to live? The same way millions of other divorced women live. You have a job, you have skills, you'll figure it out. Maybe Eliot will help you. Isn't that what boyfriends are for? Eliot won't even return my calls. He says this is too complicated, that he needs time to think. Of course he did. Eliot had signed up to be the boyfriend of a wealthy woman who was leaving her boring husband. He hadn't signed up to support a broke woman with legal troubles and a vindictive ex-husband. That wasn't nearly as appealing. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I almost meant it. "You've destroyed my life." "No, Lila, you destroyed your own life. I just refuse to let you destroy mine in the process." I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow would bring new developments, new attempts by Lila and her lawyer to undo the damage she'd done to herself. But tonight, I was going to enjoy my victory. I opened a bottle of wine, a good bottle, one Lila had been saving for a special occasion, and raised it in a toast to my empty house. Happy birthday to me. The next morning brought news that made my coffee taste even better than usual. David called while I was getting ready for work, his voice containing barely suppressed amusement. "Your wife's motion to invalidate the prenup has been denied," he said. "The judge called it frivolous and without merit." He also sanctioned her attorney for wasting the court's time. "How much?" $5,000, which, given that her accounts are frozen, she'll have to come up with out of pocket. I knotted my tie, looking at myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked the same as I had a week ago, but I felt completely different, stronger, more confident, like I'd finally stopped apologizing for taking up space in the world. "There's more," David continued. "Apparently, Mr. Brennan's wife filed for divorce yesterday. She's hired Patricia Wolfe. Patricia Wolfe was the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state, famous for destroying cheating husbands and taking them for everything they were worth. If she was representing Eliot's wife, his life was about to become very expensive very quickly." "Interesting timing," I said. "Isn't it? I suspect Mrs. Brennan received some anonymous information about her husband's extramarital activities." I hadn't sent Sophie Brennan anything, but I hadn't needed to. In a city this size, gossip traveled fast. especially among the wives of successful men. They all knew each other, all watched each other's husbands for signs of straying. Sophie had probably heard about Eliot and Lila within days of it becoming public knowledge. "What's the timeline now?" I asked. "We should have full control of the assets transferred by Friday. The divorce will be final within 30 days, assuming no more frivolous motions." After I hung up, I drove to work with the radio turned up loud, feeling better than I had in months. The sun was shining, traffic was light, and somewhere across town, Lila was waking up to her new reality. My good mood lasted until I got to the office and found Tessa waiting in the lobby. She was dressed for battle in a power suit and heels that probably cost more than most people made in a week. Her blonde hair was pulled back severely, and her makeup was applied with the precision of war paint. She looked like she was ready to take on the world, or at least one specific part of it. "We need to talk," she said, standing up as I approached. "Do we?" "About what you're doing to Lila, about how you're destroying a good woman out of spite." I considered telling her that I was late for a meeting or that she needed to make an appointment or any of the other polite brush-offs I might have used a week ago. Instead, I gestured toward the small conference room off the lobby. 5 minutes, I said. She followed me into the room, her heels clicking aggressively on the polished floor. I closed the door and turned to face her, noting the way she'd positioned herself between me and the exit, like she was ready for a fight. "You're making a mistake," she said without preamble. "Lila loves you. This thing with Eliot, it was just a phase. She was confused, lonely. You were working so much, never home, never paying attention to her. So it's my fault she cheated? I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying marriage is complicated. People make mistakes. But what you're doing now, taking everything from her, leaving her with nothing, that's not justice, Gavin. That's revenge." "You're right," I said. "It is revenge, and she earned every bit of it." Tessa's carefully composed expression cracked slightly. "She thought you were a good man." "I am a good man. Good men don't let people steal from them and lie to them and humiliate them without consequences." "She wasn't trying to humiliate you." "Really? Then why did half the city know about her affair before I did? Why was Eliot bragging about it in bars, telling anyone who'd listen about the boring husband he was helping her escape from?" That stopped her. Tessa's mouth opened and closed without sound, and I could see her trying to figure out how to spin that information in Lila's favor. "People talk," she finally said. "That doesn't mean Lila wanted to hurt you." "Doesn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she wanted to have her cake and eat it too. Keep me around to pay the bills while she had her fun with Eliot, then dump me and take half my assets when she was ready to move on." "That's not what happened, isn't it? Then explain the secret accounts, Tessa. Explain the hidden condo, the jewelry she bought with our money and kept in a safety deposit box I wasn't supposed to know about. Explain how someone accidentally hides hundreds of thousands of dollars from their spouse." Tessa was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her reassessing the situation. Maybe Lila hadn't told her friends the whole truth about her financial preparations. Maybe they'd really believed this was just a simple case of a woman falling out of love with her husband. "Even if that's true," she said finally, "what you're doing is cruel. She has nothing now. Nowhere to go, no money, no support system. She has Eliot. Eliot won't even talk to her. His wife is taking him to the cleaners, and he blames Lila for destroying his marriage." I felt a flicker of satisfaction at that news. Eliot was learning that actions had consequences, that you couldn't just take whatever you wanted without paying a price. "That's unfortunate," I said, "but not my problem." "She's staying on Monica's couch," Tessa continued, "sleeping in a guest room like some kind of refugee. Is that what you wanted? To see her completely destroyed?" Actually, yes, that was exactly what I'd wanted. But I didn't think Tessa would appreciate my honesty. "What I wanted was for my wife to be faithful to me and honest with me," I said instead. "Since that wasn't possible, I'll settle for making sure she doesn't profit from her betrayal." "You're not the man she married. Neither is she the woman I married. The woman I married wouldn't have cheated on me, stolen from me, or served me divorce papers on my birthday. So I guess we're even." Tessa stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to reconcile the man standing in front of her with the pushover she'd thought she knew. The Gavin she remembered would have apologized for taking up her time, would have promised to consider her words, would have probably offered to help Lila somehow, that Gavin was gone. "This isn't over," she said finally. "Lila has friends, people who care about her. We're not going to let you destroy her." "What exactly are you planning to do? Stage an intervention? Write angry letters to the editor? Start a GoFundMe page?" "We'll figure something out." "I'm sure you will, but while you're figuring, you might want to consider this. Lila made her choices knowing the possible consequences. She signed a prenup that clearly outlined what would happen if she cheated or hid assets. She chose to do both anyway. I didn't destroy her, Tessa. I just refused to let her destroy me. She left without another word, and I watched through the conference room window as she marched across the lobby and out the front door. Her phone was already in her hand before she reached the sidewalk, probably calling Monica or Lila or whoever was coordinating their campaign to make me the villain in this story. Let them try. I had the law on my side, and more importantly, I had the truth. Lila had gambled that she could cheat and steal without consequences, and she'd lost. Now she got to live with the results. The rest of the day passed quietly, but I could feel the tension building like pressure behind a dam. Lila's friends were regrouping, planning their next move. Eliot was probably drinking himself into a stupor while his wife's attorney calculated how much his affair was going to cost him. And somewhere across town, Lila was learning what it felt like to depend on other people's charity. I was looking forward to seeing how it all played out. At lunch, I drove past the luxury condo that was now legally mine. It was a beautiful building, all glass and steel and expensive finishes, the kind of place Lila had always dreamed of living. She'd picked it out carefully, furnished it with money she'd skimmed from our accounts, probably imagined herself and Eliot playing house there while I paid the bills for our real home. Instead, it was going to be my bachelor pad. I was already making plans to redecorate, to erase every trace of Lila's presence and make it truly mine. My phone rang as I was driving back to the office. Mark's number. "You need to get down here," he said without preamble. "Now." "What's wrong?" "Your boy Eliot is here, and he's drunk and angry and asking anyone who'll listen where he can find you. I think he's working up the courage to do something stupid." I checked the time. 2:30 in the afternoon, and Eliot was already drunk enough to be making threats in public. His life was falling apart faster than I'd expected. "I'll be right there." O'Malley's was busy for a weekday afternoon, filled with people who'd decided that lunch should include alcohol. I found Eliot at the far end of the bar, hunched over a whiskey that was definitely not his first of the day. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, the kind of hollow-eyed exhaustion that came from not sleeping. "Eliot," I said, sliding onto the stool next to him, "I hear you've been looking for me." He turned, and I could see the moment he recognized me. His face went through several emotions, surprise, anger, something that might have been shame, before settling on rage. "You son of a bitch," he slurred. "You destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped letting other people steal from me." "She loved me." He was getting louder now, attracting attention from the other patrons. "We were going to be happy together, and you ruined it." "How did I ruin it? By not letting her take my money with her when she left? By expecting her to honor the agreement she signed?" "You knew what would happen. You planned this whole thing." "I planned for the possibility that my wife might try to cheat me in a divorce. Turns out that was good planning." Eliot tried to stand up, swayed, and sat back down hard. "My wife left me, took the kids, froze my accounts, kicked me out of my own house. Because of you." "Because of you," I corrected. "Because you decided to have an affair with a married woman. Because you bragged about it in bars where people could hear you. Because you made choices that had consequences." "I loved her," he said again, and now there were tears in his eyes. "I really loved her. For just a moment, I felt something that might have been pity. Eliot was a mess, his life in ruins. Everything he'd worked for destroyed. But then I remembered the text he'd sent me the night Lila had served me divorce papers. No hard feelings, man. These things happen. And the pity evaporated. "If you loved her, you should have waited until she was divorced to start sleeping with her," I said. "If you loved her, you shouldn't have been bragging about your affair to strangers in bars. If you loved her, you should have encouraged her to be honest with me instead of helping her hide assets and plan her escape." "She said you didn't care. She said you were just going through the motions, that you'd be relieved when it was over." "She lied to you, Eliot. The same way she lied to me. The same way she's probably lying to herself right now about how this is all someone else's fault." He stared into his whiskey glass like it might contain answers to questions he was afraid to ask. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked. "The same thing everyone else does when they make bad decisions. You live with the consequences, you learn from your mistakes, and you try to do better next time." "There won't be a next time. Sophie's taking everything, the house, the kids, half my salary for the next 20 years. I'll be lucky if I can afford a studio apartment when this is over." "That's what happens when you cheat on your wife with someone else's wife. Did you think there wouldn't be a price?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I could see him trying to reconcile the man sitting next to him with the pushover he'd thought he was helping Lila escape from. "You're not what I expected," he said. "Neither were you. I expected someone who'd at least have the decency to feel guilty about what he'd done." Instead, I got someone who sent me a text telling me there were no hard feelings about him sleeping with my wife. I was drunk when I sent that. Being drunk doesn't excuse being an asshole, Eliot. It just reveals who you really are when you think no one's watching. I stood up, threw a 20 on the bar to cover his drinks, and looked down at him one last time. For what it's worth, I said, I don't think you ever really loved Lila. I think you loved the idea of her. The successful, beautiful woman who was willing to risk everything to be with you. That's not love, Eliot. That's just ego. And now you get to find out how much your ego was really worth. I left him there, hunched over his whiskey, probably planning his next drink or his next mistake. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm on my face, and I felt lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Asset transfer complete. Congratulations, you're officially a wealthy single man. I smiled and typed back, best birthday present ever. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came 3 days later, but not in the way I'd anticipated. I was working late at the office, reviewing blueprints for a new project, when the security guard called my extension. Mr. Mitchell, there's a woman here to see you. Says her name is Lila Mitchell, claims to be your wife. Send her up, I said, saving my work and clearing my desk. It was time for the final act. She looked terrible. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, no trace of the polished woman who'd served me divorce papers 2 weeks ago. Hello, Lila. Gavin. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure she was welcome, which was probably smart of her. Thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you? She came into my office, closing the door behind her, and I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. Nerves, or maybe withdrawal from the lifestyle she'd been accustomed to. I want to make a deal, she said. What kind of deal? I'll drop the divorce. We'll stay married, work on our problems, go to counseling, whatever you want. Just please give me back some of my money. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. She was desperate, but there was still something calculating in her eyes. She was still looking for an angle, still trying to find a way to come out ahead. Your money? Our money, then. The accounts, the investments, the condo. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But taking everything, that's not like you, Gavin. You're not cruel. I'm not taking everything, Lila. I'm keeping what was mine to begin with. The money you hid came from our joint income. The condo was bought with funds we earned together. I'm not stealing from you. I'm preventing you from stealing from me. It wasn't stealing. I just wanted some security, some independence. Is that so wrong? It is when you hide it from your husband while planning to divorce him. It is when you use that security to fund an affair with another man. It is when you lie about it for months while pretending our marriage meant something to you. She sat down in the chair across from my desk, and I could see her trying to summon tears. It was a performance I'd seen before, usually when she wanted something expensive. I made mistakes, she said. I know that, but I never meant to hurt you. The thing with Eliot, it just happened. I was lonely, and he was there, and it felt good to be wanted again. You were wanted, Lila. By me. For 5 years, I wanted you. I just wasn't exciting enough, wasn't rich enough, wasn't whatever it was you decided you needed. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you kissed me like you meant it? When was the last time you seemed happy to see me come home? When was the last time you acted like you were glad to be married to me? She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her trying to come up with an answer that wouldn't damn her further. Marriage is hard, she said finally. People drift apart, but that doesn't mean it can't be fixed. Some things can't be fixed, Lila. Some things, once they're broken, stay broken. Please. The word came out as a whisper. I have nothing left. Eliot won't talk to me. My friends think I'm toxic. I'm sleeping on Monica's couch like some kind of refugee. I can't live like this. You're living exactly like millions of other people live. You have a job. You have skills. You'll figure it out. With what? You took everything. I took what was mine. You still have your salary, your car, your personal belongings. That's more than a lot of divorced women start with. My salary won't even cover rent in this city, and you know it. She was right about that. Financial planners made decent money, but not enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd become accustomed to. She'd gotten used to having 2 incomes, to having access to investments and savings she hadn't contributed to. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to cheat on the man who was paying for that lifestyle. I can't believe you're being this cold. This isn't you, Gavin. The man I married was kind, generous, forgiving. The woman I married was faithful, honest, and trustworthy. I guess we both married people who don't exist anymore. My phone rang, and I glanced at the caller ID, David Chen. "Excuse me," I said to Lila, and answered the call. "David. Sorry to bother you so late, but I thought you'd want to know. Eliot Brennan was arrested an hour ago." "For what?" "Drunk and disorderly, destruction of property, making terroristic threats. Apparently he went to his estranged wife's house, broke some windows, and threatened to destroy himself in front of the children." I looked at Lila, who was watching me intently, trying to figure out what she was hearing. "Is he in jail?" "For now. His wife has a restraining order, and he violated it. He'll probably be there for a few days at least." "Thanks for letting me know." I hung up and looked at Lila, whose face had gone pale. "That was about Eliot, wasn't it?" she asked. "He's in jail. Apparently his wife's divorce isn't going as smoothly as he'd hoped." "Oh, God." She put her face in her hands. "This is all my fault." "No, it's his fault. He made his choices just like you made yours. The fact that those choices had consequences doesn't make you responsible for his reaction to them. He's not a bad man, Gavin. He's just lost, confused. He really did love me. If he loved you, he wouldn't have abandoned you the minute things got complicated. If he loved you, he'd be here right now, trying to figure out how to build a life with you instead of getting drunk and breaking his ex-wife's windows." She was crying now. Real tears this time, not the calculated performance from earlier. The weight of everything that had happened was finally hitting her. The divorce, the money, Eliot's arrest, the complete collapse of the life she'd been planning. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked. "The same thing everyone else does when they have to start over. You find a cheaper place to live, you budget your money carefully, you maybe get a second job if you need to. You learn to live within your means instead of expecting other people to subsidize your lifestyle." "I don't know how to do that." "Then you'll learn. People are remarkably adaptable when they have to be." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and for just a moment, she looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. Vulnerable, real, human. Then she straightened up, and I could see her putting her mask back on. "There has to be something," she said. "Some way we can work this out. I know you, Gavin. You're not vindictive. You don't want to see me destroyed. You're right. I don't want to see you destroyed, but I also don't want to see you rewarded for betraying me. And I definitely don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what you're hiding from me next." "I would never—" "You already did, Lila, for months. You looked me in the eye every morning and lied to me about where you'd been, who you'd been with, what you were planning. You kissed me goodbye and went to meet another man. You came home and pretended to be my wife while you were planning your escape. How am I supposed to trust you again after that?" She didn't have an answer for that, because there wasn't one. Trust, once broken, was almost impossible to rebuild, and what she'd done went so far beyond a simple betrayal that I couldn't imagine ever feeling safe with her again. "The divorce will be final next week," I said. "You can start your new life then." "What new life? I have nothing." "You have everything you had before you met me. Your job, your health, your intelligence, your looks. That's more than most people start with." "I'm 34 years old, Gavin. I can't just start over like I'm 22. "You're going to have to. Because the alternative is staying married to a man who will never trust you again, never forgive you, and never forget what you did. Is that really what you want?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. Stay married to a man who despised her, or start over with nothing but her salary and whatever charity her friends were willing to provide. "You've changed," she said finally. "Yes, I have. Betrayal will do that to a person. I never meant for this to happen. Yes, you did. Maybe not exactly this. But you meant for something to happen. You meant to leave me. You meant to take as much money as you could. You meant to start a new life with Eliot. The only thing you didn't mean was to get caught." She stood up, smoothing her sweater, trying to salvage some dignity from the wreckage of her plans. "I hope you're happy," she said. "I'm getting there. And when you're lonely, when you realize what you've lost, don't come looking for me. I won't be there." "I know," I said. "That's the point." She left without another word, and I watched through my office window as she walked across the parking lot to her car, the modest sedan she'd driven before we were married, not the luxury SUV I'd been paying for. Her shoulders were hunched against the evening chill, and she looked smaller somehow, diminished. I should have felt sorry for her. Part of me did, but a larger part of me felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Heard through the grapevine that your ex came to see you. Everything okay?" I typed back, "Everything's perfect. The divorce is final next week." "Celebration drinks?" "Absolutely." I finished my work, locked up the office, and drove home through the quiet streets of the city. The house felt different now. Not empty, but clean. Like a weight had been lifted from every room. I poured myself a glass of wine and walked out onto the back deck, looking up at the stars that were just becoming visible in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Lila was probably crying into Monica's couch cushions, and Eliot was sobering up in a jail cell, and their friends were trying to figure out how their perfect plan had gone so wrong. But here, in my house, with my wine, under my stars, everything was exactly as it should be. My phone rang one last time. David Chen. "Just wanted to let you know," he said. "The judge signed the final decree an hour ago. You're officially divorced." "How do I feel?" I asked. "How do you feel?" I thought about it for a moment, taking inventory of my emotions. Relief, satisfaction, anticipation for whatever came next. "Free," I said. "That's the right answer. Congratulations, Gavin. You handled this perfectly." After I hung up, I raised my wine glass to the night sky. Happy birthday to me, indeed. I stood there for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened, everything that had led to this moment. 2 weeks ago, I'd been a married man with a cheating wife and a secret plan. Tonight, I was a wealthy single man with a clear conscience and unlimited possibilities. Lila had gambled that she could have everything: the security of marriage, the excitement of an affair, and the financial independence of hidden assets. She'd lost that gamble, and now she got to live with the consequences. Eliot had gambled that he could take another man's wife without paying a price. He'd lost that gamble too, and now he was learning that actions had consequences. And me? I'd gambled that I was smart enough, patient enough, and ruthless enough to turn their betrayal against them. I'd won.